To the meeting. Could I ask that the volume on all tablet devices is off, and the quickest way to do that is to press function and F8. I can also remind members to switch off mobile phones to interfere with the sound recording system, and the meeting will be on camera. We have only one apology, and that's from Mrs. Karen McKevitt. Are members aware of any other apologies? No, but everyone else. The committee has been informed that there may be some disruption to, as a result of scheduled work taking place at the back of Parliament buildings. However, noise will be kept to a minimum. The Minister and the Permanent Secretary are only available until 11:30 today, which would give us an hour and a half or thereabouts. There are probably 10 members here. So if we give them maybe 10 minutes, assume that they take 10 minutes with their introductory statement, that would give us about 8 minutes each. Correct. That's how the arithmetic works out. 80 divided by 10, 8 minutes per person, and that's it. And we'll try and hold people to that. And I hope that you will be amenable to that in the grounds of equity and equality.
Absolutely.
So, inquiry into issues around emergency exiting plans, including their impact on stadium capacity for the redeveloped Casement Park Stadium. And we're getting the briefing now from the Minister, Karen McKevitt, and the Permanent Secretary, Dennis McMahon.
Morning.
You're very welcome to the meeting this morning. Could I refer members to the letter and the copy of the Project Assessment Review Report, which was received from the Department last week and is at page 4. And could I invite the Minister and the Permanent Secretary to make an opening statement? We acknowledge the point about 11:30 to finish. So we will hold members to about 8 minutes per person for questions. You want to proceed?
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you again, members, for inviting me to attend the committee today. I welcome the opportunity to brief the committee on the outcome of the Project Assessment Review PAR on the Regional Stadia Programme. The Regional Stadia Programme remains a key programme for government priority, and I am fully committed to delivering it. As the committee will be aware, in line with good programme and project management practice, I instigated a full review of the Stadia programme following evidence given by the Chair of the Safety Technical Group on the Regional Stadia programme to this committee on the 30th of April this year. This review, in the form of a project assessment review by the Major Projects Authority, was commissioned through DFP Central Procurement Directorate and was undertaken by independent experts. A range of concerns have been raised in terms of the Stadia programme and Casement Park in particular over recent months. I believe that the review provides important answers to those concerns. This review was also commissioned as soon as those concerns were raised. This review was taken forward independently by leading experts in the Major Projects Authority, part of the British Cabinet Office. And this review had specialist technical input from a very wide range of experts, including safety at sports grounds. This review has been and is clear a tangible demonstration of the openness and transparency of DCAL and myself as Minister. The PAR team conducted a peer review of the programme to assess how well the programme is being run and how confident DCAL should be that it would deliver against the objectives set out in the business case. The review team were also asked to examine the effectiveness of the approach the programme has taken to comply with health and safety requirements at the 3 stadia, with specific reference given the concerns that have been raised to Casement Park. The review took place between the 15th and the 19th of June this year. The review team had full access to all relevant documentation and discussed the programme with a full range of stakeholders. The independent project assessment review report was received by the Department in final form on Wednesday, the 5th of August, and sent to me on the same day. It was published on Friday, the 7th of August. I wanted to read the report myself and ensure that before the report was published, the STG and the GAA would have early sight of it. I also wanted to ensure that there would be no delay in the publication of the report. The review, which was technically focused, examined all 3 stadia in the regional programme and was headed up by David Blackwell, an experienced review team leader from the Cabinet Office's Major Projects Authority. This thorough and comprehensive power report presents us with a successful roadmap to progress the remainder of the regional stadia programme. I have no doubt that people will clearly pick elements of the recommendations that support their positions. I won't do that. The truth is, this report is neither a full endorsement of the stadia programme, nor is it critical of all the work that has been done to date. It is a comprehensive and factual review of the programme, identifying all of the key learning points. The report makes 20 recommendations, most of which clearly relate directly to the Casement Park project. The review team found that many aspects of the programme have gone very well, with the Ravenhill Kingspan stadia complete and Windsor Park making good progress also, and on track for successful delivery, which is a major achievement for the programme. The report clearly states that the completed Kingspan Stadium shows every sign of being highly successful. It also recognises that good progress has been made on Windsor Park, and it has been able to continue to host major international football fixtures during the construction stage, and also progress despite the unrelated separate incident relating to the West Stand. Some general weaknesses in the programme have, however, been highlighted, which can be attributed to the unique challenges the Casement Park project has been working through. Skills, capability and experience are insufficient in some areas of the programme, and improvements are required to ensure the entire programme is successfully delivered. The report highlights the unique challenges that have been faced by the Casement Park project. Firstly, planning permission granted by DOE was overturned in December 2014, following a judicial review brought by local residents group. And secondly, serious concerns have been raised about how emergency exiting will work in the new stadia design. Despite the challenges, the review team believe that meeting the goal of successfully constructing and operating a strategic regional stadium at Casement Park is still achievable. Delivery of the stadium and associated benefits will be late, but the overall programme business case remains sound. The review team acknowledged that on any project these issues would be difficult to resolve. On the Casement Park project, the problems are exacerbated by the fact that relationships between the key stakeholders are broken. There is insufficient trust to support progress without additional interventions to reset working relationships. The challenges for the programme overall are significant enough that the review team recommended that the programme needs to be led by a full-time and dedicated senior responsible owner, SRO, for the next 12 to 18 months, working solely on the stadia programme. The review team acknowledged that the STG clearly has a vital role to play in each of the stadia projects. However, the STG does not appear to have been initially designed or operated with the characteristics normally expected of a body integral to delivering the project. Putting the operation of the STG on a more formal setting is essential and should include agreeing terms of reference for the STG and the appointment of an independent person to chair the STG. While these are process points, they are critical and crucial as we move forward, because if the review has identified one thing, it is that expert reviews vary on technical issues. Our processes need to be robust enough going forward to deal with those differences of opinions. This is one issue I will come back to in a moment. The report, while acknowledging the immense contribution of the GAA staff and volunteers in guiding the project thus far, it recognises that at this stage in the project's life cycle, the demand for skilled resources will escalate rapidly. The review team believe that tangible benefits would be derived from the appointment of a project leader experienced in the delivery of major construction projects, who would robustly manage the GAA's consultants and contractors and act as a key point of contact between the project, the DCAL programme and other stakeholders. Safe exiting in an emergency was a central issue in this review. While all stakeholders placed great emphasis on their commitment to ensuring spectator safety, there were important differences in how stakeholders believed safe operation of emergency exiting could be achieved. It is important to note that at this point the differences in expert opinion, which I referred to earlier, certainly apply in the interpretation of guidance. I am not a technical expert. I have never pretended to be, and that is not my role. Therefore, I must accept the advice of professionals, and the PAR report provides clarity on the differing opinions regarding the red and green guides. I expect this will continue to be debated. However, I would emphasise that the experts who undertook this review have impeccable credentials. The review, however, found that the red guide does not specifically link the exiting arrangements or exiting time under contingency plans to the calculation of emergency exit times. There is no specific design guidance on what constitutes a reasonable time. The review team could not find support in the red guide for Sport NI's view presented to the CAL committee that even under a contingency plan scenario, evacuation from viewing areas to a place of comparative safety has to take place within 8 minutes. There was disagreement about the use of the pitch as part of a management plan contingency scenario. The GAA's design team argued that the use of the pitch in the context of contingency planning is sensible, as it provides an obvious and readily accessible safe holding area within the grounds. Both the GAA design team and the PAR reviews team independent technical advisors confirmed that phased evacuation is planned and used for stadia in Britain. The Sport NI view was that although the pitch could be used, this was only part of a free-flowing exiting system operating at the appropriate red guide or green guide flow rates. The review team could not find support for this view in the red guide. I do, however, also accept that the technical view that the GAA should plan for all the exits on Andersonstown Road to be closed. The main point is that the review team believe that, based on their independent technical advice, acceptable solutions can be found that will support the strategic regional stadia for Casement Park. I do not believe we have definitive answers on every technical question. Some issues can only be resolved through further work involving all key stakeholders, but the report gives us an independent and informed view as to how these issues can be resolved. I think it is important to stress that the PAR report published last Friday was carried out entirely independently of myself and my department. I had no control or influence over its content or its findings. I welcome the conclusion of the PAR report that the goal of constructing and operating a strategic regional stadium for the GAA in Ulster is achievable on the Casement Park site. I also welcome the fact that there is recognition of how well many aspects of the programme have been delivered to date. While people have criticised the stadium programme and myself over recent weeks and months, this report by leading independent professionals demonstrates beyond any shadow of a doubt the open and transparent and professional approach that I have taken in relation to the Casement Park project. I accept this report in full, both the recognition of the good work thus far and indeed the recommendations for change. I would urge others to do likewise. This project can and should be completed, and I believe that we are now in a better position than ever before to move ahead with it. There are challenges ahead for all the stakeholders, and while it is disappointing that the stadium may not be completed as soon as we would have liked, the report sets out the direction of travel. I will work tirelessly to ensure that all necessary steps are taken to ensure that it can be progressed as soon as possible. The report refers to the fact that relationships between key stakeholders are broken and that there is insufficient trust between the stakeholders to support progress without additional interventions to reset those relationships. I realise that relations need to be reset, but there is a common goal amongst all the stakeholders that Casement Park should be redeveloped, and that should serve as an incentive for all sides to work together to ensure that this happens. There are aspects of the report that may make uncomfortable reading for particular individuals and groups and organisations. There is no doubt the commitment of people involved in the programme and the contributions they have made to date. But there are learning points for everyone, and the findings should be seen as an opportunity to develop skill sets and address any shortcomings that have been identified. While I or my department can contribute directly to this process, we will not be found wanting. The use of the playing pitch as part of an emergency evacuation contingency scenario has been the subject of much discussion, with key stakeholders expressing very different views on this issue. This, as the committee will be aware, has been a thorny issue which could impact severely on the proposed project. The review team have made a clear judgment on this issue, and this will be very helpful as we move forward. The review team have stated that for the new stadium at Casement Park, which will be built to modern standards of fire assistance, all stakeholders we spoke to accepted that an 8-minute emergency exit time was appropriate. The review team went on to say, and I quote, "We believe it is common ground among stakeholders that emergency exit times of 8 minutes can be achieved for capacity crowds when all exits are available." The report makes 20 recommendations. It is my intention to fully implement all recommendations contained in the PAR report as soon as possible, and I would encourage others to do likewise to ensure the successful delivery of the Regional Stadium Programme and the redevelopment of Casement Park.
Thank you very much indeed for the introductory statement. I think it would be appropriate to say at the start that a number of members of the committee did express concern about the fact that the report was released late on a Friday afternoon, that it was released to the media at 1 o'clock, and that members of the committee, including the Chair and the Vice Chair, only received that at 4 o'clock when it went out to the general public on the departmental website. And there was an expression of opinion by a number of members of the committee, I don't know how many, but a number did express a concern that that was disrespectful to the committee. I just make that point at the start. Could I pick up on just a couple of points here? First is this, that there will be observations, conclusions, recommendations in the report, but I want to look at one of the core issues with the report, and that's in relation to the technical side of it. Because some of the recommendations are about the architecture, the structure of how a stadium might be delivered and how you get the best structure, and it's very critical of the structure that the department set up originally. But when we come to that issue of the technical side, I noticed you said that the team have made a clear judgment, those are the words that were used, in relation to those technical issues about 8 minutes, the pitch and the phased evacuation. They had no expertise or experience themselves in those areas. And they admit that on page 6 of the report, where they say the review team needed access to specialist advice on stadium safety as part of this review. And then you're directed to Annex A, which is on page 39. And on page 39, they say, with the prior agreement of the review team, CPD commissioned a team from KSS Design Group to act as independent technical advisors to the review team. They were selected on the basis of their expertise, knowledge of the Green Book regime in GB, and because there were no conflicts of interest that would prevent them advising the review team on the 3 stadium projects. I was quite astounded when I read that. And the point has already been made by a member of Mr. Cree's party in a statement in regard to the fact that the company that was brought in, which is simply a commercial company, KSS, to work on this, they were brought in as the independent experts. It was pointed out that in fact there is already a commercial connection between KSS and the people building the stadium, Heron Buckingham JV, because they both work together on the ground for Brighton and Hove Albion. Now, I'd never heard of KSS until then, but as soon as I got the report, I went to their website, and it's immediately clear. But not only do they have a past connection with Heron Buckingham, going back some years, but at this very point in time, the two are locked together inextricably in a collaboration on a multi-million pound contract in Dublin. Their website states specifically that back in February of this year, before they were appointed, The National Sports Campus Development Authority in Dublin signed a construction contract for the National Indoor Arena in Dublin, awarded to Heron Buckingham JV and KSS. How does that constitute in any way independence when the two companies are working together as collaborators on a project that is value, I'm sure, to many, many millions of pounds? That removes any credibility, I would have thought, from any claim that they are independent. Could I ask the Minister and Mr McMahon, were you aware of that fact, that there was that close commercial connection currently between Buckingham JV and Heron Buckingham JV and KSS?
Well, first of all, Chair, there was quite a lot in what you have just said, so if there's anything I don't cover, feel at liberty to come back to. But CPD appointed...
Yeah, but...
Would you let me finish?
Sure.
CPD made the appointment on the basis that they felt that they felt that there wasn't the perceived conflict of interest that the Chair has just outlined. Also, that the pool of people, technical experts in this field, is quite small. I mean, out of a pool of 8 originally, it was whittled down from 4 to 3. One of the partners, who are one of the companies who put themselves forward, ruled themselves out simply because it wouldn't be available, not because of any conflict of interest, which brought it down to 3. And on the basis of that, CPD were happy to appoint KSS. That answers that. You mentioned at the start original design. I'm assuming it's original design from 2011, not when you were in the department. So if you could clarify that, and then perhaps I could clarify.
Sorry, could you make the point again?
Making the point that when you talked about the original design brought forward, original in terms of whose tenure, your tenure or mine? You said it in the first part of your opening statement and question.
So I'm saying here, sorry, just for clarity, that in February of this year, KSS...
It was before that. It was before you got on to February of this year. Perhaps we could come back to it.
Well, sorry, could I just, if we're going to go back over things, Minister, could you actually answer the question? Were you aware that there was a close commercial connection?
No.
You weren't?
No, and I don't believe that there is.
Sorry. Like, nobody, with all respect, Minister, nobody in the whole of Northern Ireland is going to accept that point, that there is no commercial connection. And when you have KSS and Heron Buckingham JV collaborating today, and since February of this year, on a multi-million-pound project that they are working together to deliver. Well, that is a commercial connection.
Yeah, but there's a difference between commercial connections, and as I said before, the pool's small between an over conflict of interest.
Sorry, but
CPD felt that there was no conflict of interest.
And you were not aware. Could I ask Mr McMahon, was he aware?
The simple answer to that is no. And the reason I was not aware is because I am not directly involved and have not been directly involved in the procurement of the support for the independent review team, and indeed the Minister has not been directly involved in that, and in fact it would not have been appropriate had we been. As the Minister has said, CPD initially pulled together a list of 8 companies on the basis of the RIBA, which is the Royal Institute of British Architects website, or not website, database. And on the basis of that, as the Minister has said, 4 were ruled out immediately on the basis that they were involved in the casement or in the regional stadia programme, not casement. Another one was unavailable, and that left 3. So it is, as the Minister says, it was absolutely CPD are there to ensure that the procurement process is followed correctly. They did ask advice from the project team, the programme team, of course, about whether or not there were obvious conflicts of interest, and the programme team based that advice on the fact that they had not been involved in the casement park or in the regional stadia programme. The view was that, as the Minister says, there is a small pool there when you get into large programmes and projects of this scale. And the view was taken that so long as there was not a direct conflict of interest between this company and the regional stadia programme, that was not a conflict of interest, and that we had to go on the basis of the best company that was available, and that's the process that was followed. So, and just I think it's important to say up front that from the very beginning, KSS were very open about who they worked with. and came forward with that to CPD and declared that to CPD as part of the process of selecting the company. So that's the process that was followed, and that's how it came to that conclusion.
First of all, I'm sure we'll want to speak to those who carried out the procurement, because they were represented on the project team. Some people may want to speak to the project team in due course to find out exactly who knew what. But we've at least made clear that you didn't know that there was a close commercial and a current commercial connection to the value of many, many millions of pounds between KSS and Heron Buckingham. Most people, I think, will look at that and say simply, there is no independence whatsoever when you have a connection worth millions of pounds. Those are millions of reasons why KSS should not have been the company that carried out this work. Is it really independent if there is such a close commercial connection?
I have no reason to believe that it is not, that they did not provide an independent view, but I am happy to look at evidence if people feel that a contrary view applies. You know, our view is we have to have confidence in Central Procurement Directorate, ensuring that we maintain adherence to the processes. We have to have confidence that we've got an independent review team led by the Major Projects Authority, and you know, again, the process was what the process was, and people made a judgment on the basis of the level of connection with the regional stadia programme and the size of the pool of consultants. So, as I say, it is what it is, and that our judgment is that at this stage that this was an independent review that was carried out by independent experts, and we're just taking it at face value. And as the Minister has said, the review itself, certainly I don't get the impression that there's a lot of positive points for everybody who's been involved in the programme. There's an awful lot of issues, frankly, that we all have to address, including decal. So there's no sense that, in reading that, I don't get a sense of a report that in any way, you know, gives decal an easy time or gives any other stakeholder an easy time, and that's where I am at the moment with it. But again, very happy to look at any other information that anybody wants to bring forward.
Well, could I direct you to the KSS website then, where it states clearly about that? You talk about the level of connection. We know the level of connection is millions of pounds. Mr. Humphrey. Thanks,
Chair. Thank you both very much for coming along. Can I just ask, this review that you've had, is this the response that was outlined in the letter from the Minister to Assembly members the 12th of May? Is the piece of work now as the response to that?
Yes, it's one of the pieces.
One of the processes.
Yeah. Okay, can I just go back to that letter? In terms of I remember clearly asking you both on that day in relation to Mr. Scott's position, because it says clearly in this letter here, any future change in the membership and the rules of the STG will be a matter for the group to consider and agree. Why do you now think it's appropriate for your department, Minister and Permanent Secretary, to go back on what you said on the 12th of May in this letter?
Well, first of all, it's pre the outcome of the Power report, which was last week. The report, as the member I'm sure has read, has indicated very clearly that there needs to be an independent chairperson of the STG. It doesn't say anything about Paul Scott being removed from the STG at all.
Good. I welcome that, because Mr. Scott, and the evidence he gave to this committee, made it very clear he was appointed by your department, and Mr. Scott is independent. Mr. Scott is an expert in this field, recognised nationally and internationally as an expert in this field, and I think it's important that's on the record, despite those who would seek to demean him, smear his character and question his professionalism.
Sir, sorry, Mr. Scott isn't independent. Mr. Scott's an employee of Sport NI.
Well, I'm going to come to that, because during your presentation, Minister, you said in Sport NI's view, and I take it that means Paul Scott or Laura Strong's view, on emergency exiting, that is an independent view. He is an independent expert. Does the department not accept that?
I mean, Minister, if you want me to...
Yeah, I'll come back.
I mean, from the point of view of this process, I think there's two questions there. The first thing is you're asking why go back on it. Honestly, I didn't actually expect to see recommendations, or I didn't know what recommendations would come out of it in relation to the STG. So, you know, this has now changed things in terms of the PAR come in, and the PAR identified a situation that relationships have broken down. I didn't read any criticism of any individual, or for that matter, any organisation in there. There were areas where the report agreed with some experts on, because remember that there's design teams who would consider themselves experts as well. There was some agreement with some of the views. There was some agreement with some of the views in the STG, key point, and the Sport NI views. And what we end up with is a situation where the report recommends that there are a set of governance and processes that need to be put in place to ensure that all of those expert views are brought together and brought together properly.
With respect, Mr McMahon, I did not say the report had made those, but there are people out there who have done. I did not make reference to the report. You're taking that. I didn't say that.
Apologies. Well, I mean, what I will say is, I can say it quite clearly. I met with Mr Scott and with the STG on the 23rd of June, and we had a very positive meeting.
In this letter as well, the Minister says, I have asked the Permanent Secretary of my department to convene a meeting of the STG to hear the concerns at first hand, and I distinctly remember raising that issue that day, basically saying, you're stating to this committee you're not removing the man as chairman, but yet you, as Permanent Secretary, were going to convene a meeting. Now, I have to say that when I read this, the question I asked that day, and then what potentially might flow, I welcome the Minister's reassurance that not necessarily the case that Mr Scott is going to be removed, that there's a predetermined, with some people's predetermined outcome here to remove that man from that job.
I would absolutely refute that, and I think
good. That's good.
Sorry,
in terms of the independent programme review, and it talks about here would commission a full review of the project, including independent specialist advice as appropriate, and talks about independent experts. The Chairman has made reference to the independent experts and whether they're truly independent at all. Can I ask you, Mr McMahon, as the Permanent Secretary of the Department, why did your department take a decision not to engage the recognised experts in terms of sports safety and grounds, the Sports Ground Safety Authority, which is the UK's authority when it comes to an expert authority when it comes to safety at sports grounds?
The answer to that is we did. We wrote to them on the 5th of June 2015, and we sought input from them, professional input to the independent review team, and they input to the review team.
So, my question was, why did you not appoint them to do this? I mean, are they not the natural people that you would go to do? They're independent. They're government.
The normal process when programmes and projects are experiencing problems, and clearly we have a programme and a project that was experiencing a problem, is to either commission a special gateway review, or if there are particular issues, in this case, to commission a project assessment review. It is absolutely, there are many different stakeholders who will have expert views on particular areas, and absolutely the Safety at Sports Ground Authority are one of those.
No, sorry, they are the UK Sports Ground Safety Authority.
And
not
indeed,
one of them, they are the.
And indeed, their input, they input directly into this report.
Right, and they're fully in support of this report.
I didn't say that. I said they input directly into this report.
Right.
The Major Projects Authority, this is not a new process. The Major Projects Authority do this kind of work for major programmes and projects, and we have followed standard processes here. We went through the Central Procurement Directorate. We got their advice on the most appropriate form of review to take forward. Their advice was that under the circumstances, a project assessment review was the way to take this forward, and that is exactly what we did.
And can I then ask, in terms of the, we will have the Sports Authority in front of this committee, I think in September, and we will then ascertain if they're, as in, are fully in support of this document. But can I ask, the people who produced this document, PAR and KSS, are they experts solely in dealing with safety at sports grounds?
No, they are experts in a very wide range of large-scale capital programmes.
Such as building airports, train stations, roadworks.
Roadworks.
Yeah.
Free range.
But they are not experts solely on safety at sports grounds.
And that's why the Safety at Sports Grounds Authority have been contacted as part of this
Right.
report.
So
Can
can
I
I
just
ask
say-
finally,
This was not entirely about, this was, safety is a central aspect of this.
Yeah.
But actually, this was about whether the programme of the project was working and what needed to be done to get it back on track.
Yeah.
And they were exactly the people we needed to involve to
Okay,
get that
can
through.
I then ask,
Very,
right, time up.
very quick, yeah.
Can I then ask very quickly, in terms of the Safety at Sports Grounds Authority, are you sure, as Minister and Permanent Secretary of the Department, that they will support the recommendations and all that is contained in this report?
I am not sure of that at all, and I'm not sure that any other stakeholders will absolutely support every recommendation in this report. And in fact, I think that the most important thing coming out of this report is not that everybody agrees that every word of it is right or wrong. What is most important out of this report is that we have a process which allows us to bring together the expert views that are needed in order to bring this project and programme to a successful completion.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
He asked, Mr Humphrey asked there about the input from the Sport Ground Safety Authority. Could you just ask, what was the level of their input? Because KSS, as a commercial company, were there throughout the process. What was the level of input?
They were asked to provide suitably qualified specialist technical experts to assist with the PAR team,
Yeah.
and they were interviewed as
Was this a
part.
half-hour interview or was it a full day?
I wasn't there, so I can't answer that question.
Rosie McCormick?
Gurmaagad Carly, agus Gurmaagad Ira, agus Devis as Chacton Shaw Armagin. Thanks, Chair, and thank you to Minister Dennis for coming to the committee this morning. And I'd like to say just first that I welcome the report and the outcomes of it, because I feel it brings clarity to what was an issue that has been of great concern for about 4 months. So I feel that the independent experts have brought clarity to the emergency evacuation issue. So, I say it's positive. But obviously the report is not going to be easy reading for some of the stakeholders. So can I ask in that context, Minister, what commitment can you give us that you will implement the PAR report in its entirety, and will you ensure full implementation?
Well, certainly from DCA's point of view, I can ensure that it's implemented in its entirety. We've already begun the process of looking for a new Senior Responsible Officer, new ESR, working solely on the Stadia programme. In relation to the other stakeholders, we will very quickly look at where we can get an independent chair of the STG, and also at the same time meet with all the stakeholders to work out how they're going to respond to their input into implementing the PAR recommendations from the PAR report. It's still work in progress. I'm sure the members seen, starting from the summary of the recommendations on page 7 of the report, it goes through not only what the recommendations are, what they feel the status in terms of parity of those recommendations, but certainly in terms of timescale. I work on this to ensure not only, for my part, the confidence is restored, particularly in relation to the findings of this report. But I think one of the other challenges is we've all, very clearly, we all need to set and reset relationships that have been damaged and need to be repaired up until now. I haven't heard anybody, and I have watched a lot of witnesses giving evidence in this committee and read most, if not all, of the Hansards. I haven't heard anybody saying that they don't want to see the redevelopment of Casement Park. They've certainly got concerns about how that happened. So, let's put our best foot forward and ensure that we do get the redevelopment of Casement Park. This report says it can be done. And what's more, it can be done with safety paramount to its core, and that's something that I've always wanted to achieve throughout. So I'll certainly not be found wanting, as I said in my open statement, to ensure that from DCAL's point of view, we'll implement those recommendations to the full.
Okay, Ira, and I too have heard nothing really from anybody saying that they don't want the stadium park. So I think this is good news for everybody, and it's important that a way forward is found. So let's see where it goes. But the report also finds that a new planning application for Casement could take up to 12 months to prepare, and that would represent a huge delay in the delivery of the project. Are you content with that timescale?
Well, I regret that the Casson Park, redevelopment Casson Park, has actually seen another delay. I mean, some of the delays actually were not of their making as a result of the overturning of a plan application as a result of a judicial review. The Power team have set out that it can take up to a year. They've allowed up to a year for that process to happen. I mean, it's a very significant, complex programme and project. They've also laid out what they'd like to see happen in parallel to the consultation process in preparation for submission of a plan application. For example, they need to see an emergency exit, they need to see a robust traffic management strategy, all of which can happen parallel to a consultation. That in itself will take, and they've recommended there's at least 20 weeks to go beyond the minimum statutory requirements. They want to ensure that as much as possible lessons have been learnt, not as a result of this, but lessons that need to be learnt in terms of bringing forward a comprehensive application to planning for the redevelopment of Casement. So I think it's a realistic, it seems like a realistic guideline in terms of how we go forward, but these people are experts, despite some people here questioning their credentials. They are experts. I'm accepting their expertise and their independence, and I'm assuring others who have been mentioned in this report to do likewise.
Would it be your view that there will be thorough consultation with the residents in advance of submission of a plan?
Absolutely. Residents are a key stakeholder, as are business people, as are users and potential users of Casson Park, but indeed all the amenities and surrounding areas. And it's not just the consultation around, the Casson Park site. It's consultation open for everybody to input into. But the Ulster Council, the GAA, and everybody else need to ensure that that consultation process is as robust, as open and transparent as possible, and as inclusive as possible. And I believe the guideline of the 20 weeks will ensure that that happens. And I also know that the Ulster Council will ensure that will happen as well.
Margaret.
Thank you. Leslie Cree.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning.
Good morning, Leslie.
The Chairman's already made some comments to some of the concerns that I would have, but it hasn't been mentioned that Heron Buckingham actually are the contractors, aren't they, appointed from Casement Park? Was that not another clear question mark there on the independence?
KSS weren't involved and aren't involved.
No, I'm not saying KSS, I'm saying Heron Buckingham are the contractors, true or false?
Oh, that's correct, yes. And indeed, there, as you pointed out, there are projects that they've worked on with KSS, and that's absolutely clear.
And are working on.
I think it's
And are
particularly
working on-
important,
yes,
that
I mean,
they're working in this contract, but
Yeah.
could I then, just to move on to why the Sports Ground Safety Authority weren't used, I've done some research on this, and it would appear that the extent of their involvement was 2 interviews. Is that right?
Well,
Only 2 interviews?
Well, again, Leslie, with respect, we've been asked that question by the Chair, and indeed what he asked was exact amount of time spent from the Power team with the SSA, and we're going to try and ascertain that. I mean, you're saying there's 2 interviews. You clearly,
If you clarify that, that would be
you
appreciated.
clearly have an opinion that that's the case. So
Yes.
we need to clarify it one way or the other.
I think it's also important to say that the review itself takes place, as the report says, over a 4-day period. So there is obviously within that, there's a very tight schedule, and they get as many interviews in. And that's the nature of these project assessment reviews. They go through a very intense process of speaking to the stakeholders. So, as I say, it is what it is. But they spoke to. Certainly, if they had 2 interviews, that would not be insignificant either.
Well, bearing in mind that the Sports Ground Safety Authority actually are the authors of the Green Guide anyway, I would have thought they would have had a paramount position, bearing in mind the big question, which is still unresolved. I've read the report twice about emergency exiting.
And I think it is important to say that the purpose of the report is not to resolve all of the technical issues.
No, it doesn't do that.
What it does really is it's meant to be a strategic view to say these are the problems that the project and programme are experiencing, and here's how you need to move ahead to go through them. So some of those issues will need to be definitively resolved.
Yeah, but-
I think it's simply making the point that we couldn't do it under the existing structures that we have.
No, but these are the core issues that remain to be resolved.
Yeah.
Another concern I have is and again we ventilated this one, the 2023 Rugby World Cup. As I understand it, tenders have to be in by June of next year, and obviously Casement Park was one of the venues that we all hoped would be used. Does this mean that that's going to be simply dropped now?
No, it certainly doesn't. I mean, even for the deadline for June of next year for the bid, you wouldn't have had a completed Casement Park, redevelopment of
making a
Casement
bid
Park. So absolutely, we'll be making a bid.
And that's encouraging. The 38,000 stadium is still on the cards then, but the time scale is what it is. What about the Financial Minister? Can you update us just where we are now with costs and the likely safety, bearing in mind we're going into a new mandate of this money?
Well, we certainly are going to go into a new mandate in this money within a very short time. It has been a programme for government commitment. I mean, there's certain aspects of regional development or regional stadia we're getting into the next mandate anyway, particularly around sub-regional for soccer. But soon after, we will be meeting colleagues within DFP to work out the implications for the budget getting into the next CSR. But I'm content that that certainly we're on the right track. We haven't overspent. The programme and the budget is still on time.
Could you just update us on that, Minister? What is the current spend?
Well, the current spend's almost 6 million.
It's 5.6
well,
million.
yeah, just over 5.5 million, and that's in keeping with professional fees, technical fees. It's all within the budget that was set out originally.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. David Hilditch.
Thanks, Chair. Very welcome this morning. Along. Fortunately, the STG and further down the line, and I'll get into some of the areas that have already been covered here. Certainly it is very worrying this morning in relation to the sort of relationship that's emerging between the Heron Buckingham Group and KSS. But on the more technical side of things, in relation to the 8-minute and evacuation and some of the content of the report, a lot of the commentary does reflect much of the evidence that we received here from Heron Buckingham, and I'm sort of surprised to see that within the report. But going to the detail of the 8-minute issue and the other matters around that, it appears that people keep saying that there are projects in other places, potentially within the UK, where this happens, but nobody ever seems to come up with the locations of these stadia. Have you, in any of your conversations with the interested parties, have learned of any of these stadia?
Well, I mean, first of all, the PAR report, and I'm not saying the members, this you in particular, are questioning how they come up with the 8-minute rule, but they are the experts, and certainly, you know what, I think the thing that's quite clear to me is that they're saying that the process, particularly around the green and red guides, with the redevelopment of the Casement Park programme and the emergency evacuation, is achievable. I think what we need to do, and what I imagine the STG would do, and certainly the GA, if they haven't already done it, is go and visit some of these other programmes and some of the other developments. I mean, they've already done it. They've already done it under Paul Scott, which I'm sure you know already. So, for clarity and for information to come back to the committee on, I'd certainly try and get examples
If you
of
could,
what
Minister,
has
because these
happened.
stadiums can't be found. They cannot be found, I have to say. And the report does go to dilute the green and red guide, I have to say, to a certain degree. It uses guidance in good practice terms and this sort of thing. But the red and green guides actually formulate the safety certificate and the potential determining of capacities. And I say that with a very limited expertise as being the safety officer last night, particularly for the Carrie Glenfield game. And you do have to go through all this methodically, and it really, the report itself just doesn't link to me, in my mind, with the importance of the red and green guide.
Well, I believe that not only, I would disagree with you only in terms of I believe that it does, and I'm not a technical expert, and I'm not someone who stands at a soccer game trying to prepare and ensure that the safety procedures are there, and not only are they there, that people understand them. But these people are experts, and they have went and examined, albeit in detail, from a short period, exactly what's achievable. But in terms of the safety certificate, you will know it's the Belfast City Council who issue a safety certificate. It isn't the STG.
Yeah.
This report, in my opinion, has been silent.
And their evidence was very clear before us.
Exactly, on the role, and I see that as well. On the role and the authority that Belfast City Council have. So they are the statutory body, the only statutory authority that issues safety certificates.
Mm-hmm. And I know there's reference to the experts of power. The four guys are not. There's no expertise in technical matters within the four people on power in relation to safe sports grounds.
Well, that's your opinion.
They admit that in the paper themselves.
I think the key issue about this is, though, that this is not, as I said earlier, this was never intended as a process to identify in this report answers to all of the technical issues. What it does highlight is that even amongst the people with a lot of expertise, there are some different interpretations around the Green and Red Guide. It refers consistently to the Green and Red Guide, but I think just to provide a bit of reassurance, certainly in moving forward, the Green and Red Guide are the Green and Red Guide, and that's what we're using, and that's what we'll be working with. And this report doesn't recommend doing anything other than that. So I think it's important to say that the process is the important point here.
Mr. Madden, the commentary within the report doesn't give me confidence of what you're saying to me here today. That's the problem.
I think it's the point.
It's leaving the door very wide open and open for various interpretations.
I think that's a fair point, that it's highlighting the fact that there are differences of interpretation, and I think it's right that it does that. But nevertheless, I think it is not at all suggesting that we should in any way deviate from the guidance, and I think it's suggesting a process which will. I mean, the bottom line in this is it's recommending that the STG is going to have to be involved in the development of this in an absolutely appropriate way to make sure that their views are fully taken on board. And the STG will be based on, and in a sense, the chair issue is about the management of that process, but ultimately the professional views will have to be based on the Green and Red Guide and will have to be brought into the process in order to get the project to successful completion.
Yes, in this report, again, the commentary reflects the views of KSS and Boylan. To me, it gives me a more commercial sense of what they want to achieve, rather than what we should be doing with the Red and Green Guide, and why there should have been an independent group or person or body brought in to actually do this.
Well, that's a view. I mean, the only issue for me is that there are other views in there which very clearly do not necessarily accord with the views of the design team around casement. So there are some views that they agree with, and there are some views that they don't.
Yeah, and there's quite a few in it that everybody agrees with. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But the more, don't want to use the word controversial ones, but the ones that have caused us problems, there's a slant on it towards those who have a commercial interest.
To be fair, there are some others that would cause everybody problems, and they've taken a different view on them. They have taken a different. They've not just taken. I mean, my reading of it, again, I'm not a technical expert, but my reading of it is, you can see arguments for and against particular issues that have come up and issues that have come up from this committee. It certainly does not come down on the side of any one group. I thought that was my reading of it.
It's time up, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see there. Who's next? Oliver McMullen.
Thank you, Chair. And can I thank you for your presentation this morning, Minister. I too want to welcome this report, for I do believe it brings clarity and does bring reassurance back to the public. And of course, this report, it could weigh heavily in one way or another, but I don't think it does, because it does answer a lot of questions that this committee was asking prior to the report. And they can be interpreted by people in their own way, but I think it does go a long way to answer those questions. Can I ask that there was recent speculation in the media suggesting the STG disputed the findings of the power report. Can we ensure that this speculation can be managed? What way will it be managed?
Well, I've seen, well, first of all, thanks for your questions, and I've seen other aspects of speculation within the media. But in relation, a lot of it's been about what people feel others may interpret it to be fair. However, we have received from the interim Chief Executive of Sport NI correspondence outlining some of the concerns around the implementation of the PAR report, and in fact some of the maybe contrary views that the STG may have regarding some aspects of that. I believe that's very open, I believe that's very transparent. That's the way in which I would prefer to deal with issues rather than people speculating about speculation. So as part of what we do next, how we take this forward, we will be engaging with the interim Chief Executive of Sport NI about how we do go forward in terms of PAR and what the next steps are, and what we all can collectively do to try and ensure not only aspects that relate particularly to the STG, but indeed how the STG can impact on other aspects that relate to others as well. And I believe that's the most healthiest and most appropriate way in which to deal with it. There's a lot of speculation out there. You could spend your time trying to catch smoke in the bucket. I would much prefer, to be honest with you, people dealt with issues in this manner.
Yeah. Can I thank you for that there? And my other question, Chair, I think Leslie did ask a question, I think it was the same one. Going into the next comprehensive spending review, can you commit that the stadium will be go ahead?
Well,
but I think you've answered that one.
Absolutely, and I mean, just to give reassurance again that as part of, particularly because the regional stadia programme and indeed the start of the consultation into sub-regional, we have and will continue to have strong engagement with our colleagues in DFP, and indeed, I mean, this is a key priority for a programme for government commitment, and we would be doing that to ensure not only are people kept up to date, but any challenges in terms of budget, not only for now, but certainly get into the next CSR, are reflected in the next CSR. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Horsham.
Agus Kerry, agus Tavadir O'Fire, agus Dennis Hagan Christian. You're very welcome to the committee. Further to Mr. Holditch's questions, just in terms of the assertion contained within the PAR report, which I do welcome because of the clarity it has provided. What's your view of the assertion that both the STG and indeed Sports NI were actually wrong in their assessment in terms of the interpretations of the red and green guides?
Well, I mean, again, it's even from this committee, you can see that people are taking different interpretations of it. What's very clear, the PAR have actually stood over the recommendation that, in respect of, as an example, the pitch can be used in the process of emergency evacuation. They also made recommendations in terms of exiting and which exits can be used. I think they're helpful recommendations to certainly clarify a lot of dispute, particularly that arose from an appearance at this committee on the 30th of April. But like as I said to other members previously, the role in which STG have, the role in which all the stakeholders have in bringing not only the implementation of this report but bringing the programme forward is crucial, and that I believe even working through the PAR report is progress, is going to be work in progress. But I was actually relieved to see that their recommendations supported what many others had said, particularly at this end of the table.
I think perhaps that central aspect of the pitch being used as a holding place of relative safety is critical to that. Just in terms of Sport NI, there is a reference within it about a greater capacity. Is Sport NI, given all that, what else is going on at the minute, is it?
It talks about the need for skill sets, and it talks about the need for increased capacity, not just for Sport NI, well, for us all, to be frank. Again, in working out the relationships with Sport NI and STG and GA and forward, we'll be looking. We're going through a process of trying to get a new RO. We're going through a process of trying to get a new independent chair as part of all this, working through it, and it does lay out very clearly about things that need to be done, and it's given a different priority in terms of how they're done. But irrespective of how the PAR report them to be either critical, essential or recommended, I will ensure as best as I possibly can, that we all look to try and get the redevelopment of Casement Park and all try and agree the way forward and how we get that done. And if there is a need for additional resources for us all, particularly the ones that Par have pointed out, then I'd be asking how the individual stakeholders are going to try and meet that recommendation. And I'll work with them to give them support in doing so.
And is Sport NI in its current form fit for purpose as an arm's length body?
Well, the issue, and there continues to be issues around Sport NI, particularly in relation to the climate that people felt that they came forward. They're now, I don't particularly like the term, but they're now people who have came forward as part of the whistleblowing protocol that was initiated. There are certainly confidence issues within Sport NI about a variation of things, including some have identified working in a culture of fear and a culture of bullying. What's clear for me is that the accusation that was made at this committee, particularly in terms of safety and in terms of gagging and bullying, I personally ordered and instigated those two separate processes. They're well underway. We have a very, very competent team in there, albeit as in an interim form, trying to work through those issues and at the same time trying to deal with this as well. I'm content at this stage we've put as much support in as we possibly can. The detail will be the outcome of how we implement these recommendations and indeed how we implement challenges in the future.
Okay, very well.
Thank you. Dominic Bramley.
Thanks, Chair. Point away.
For a Burley ditch.
I think probably everybody around the table, and maybe yourself included, agrees that this report doesn't paint a pretty picture. There were a lot of shortcomings on various sides, on their own department's side and so on and so forth. Where were you as Minister in the middle of all this?
Well, in the middle of all this, I was trying to be as open and transparent and as accountable as I possibly could. I mean, the report, in terms of the recommendations for decal, have clearly said that we need a dedicated SRO. There's many parts of this process I believe have been very challenging and very difficult. But where I am, we now have the opening of Ravenhill Kingspan. We're progressing very well in terms of Windsor Park. I'm going to ensure I do everything I possibly can to see the redevelopment of Casement Park. That's where I am. Where I am is when problems and accusations were made in this committee. I didn't wait on anybody telling me what to do. I instigated 2 of the 3 processes. Where I am is I'm looking at the report and already started processes, making the recommendations, or I'll implement them, and I'll be here to ensure, as long as I'm here, that they're done.
You said, I think you said that you were unaware of some of these issues until I think it was the 29th of May.
The 30th of April, I wasn't.
Sorry, the 30th
of April in relation to the allegations that Paul Scott made.
Yes, but I mean, it sounds to me that you were very much in the dark about what was going on around Casement Park.
Well, I'm absolutely not. I'm absolutely
but
not.
Were you up until that point?
Well, I wasn't aware of the accusations that Paul Scott made until the 30th of April. I don't think anybody was aware.
But apart from those specific accusations, in general, and the report looks at issues beyond the safety issues, and there were shortcomings outside of the safety issues in the communication of information between the various stakeholders and so on and so forth. Were you in the dark about all of that, about those shortcomings?
Well, and I believe that those relationships and the need to repair those relationships are post the 30th of April 2015. I mean, that is quite clear from my point of view, that because of the accusation and the allegations that were made, and indeed from the evidence given by various stakeholders at this committee, that there was a complete refutal of the accusations that were made in relation to the emergency evacuation. I think it's also worth saying that as soon as challenges like that were brought, rather than trying to pass the responsibility onto someone else, I initiated these processes, and I stand over that. And not only do I stand over that, but I want to ensure that, first of all, that even though it's clear even from the meeting this morning, there are different interpretations of this report. I'm not responsible for what people say in this room. What I'm responsible for what's in my department, and I've already actioned those challenges the decal.
Yeah, I agree with you that there are different interpretations, but you know what I said at the outset was I think most people agree that it's not a pretty picture in some places. But can I ask you, having read this report and experienced the situation up until the publication of the report, between the 30th of April and the publication of the report, how will you personally behave as Minister in relation to all of this in the future?
Well, I believe from the 30th of April that I've acted in a very professional and transparent way. I believe that I have been very consistent in my approach in ensuring that the redevelopment of Castle Park happens. I also believe that I have made myself and my department as open as I possibly can, and that will remain the case. I also believe that I have given respect and due regard to the other two developments, and indeed started the process of the sub-regional into soccer, and that will continue. And I hope whoever comes behind me will have the same respect for equality for the three governing bodies and ensure that this programme for government commitment is met.
Yeah, well, really what I'm saying is, you know, up until the 30th of April, you know, when we look back on it, it very much appears as if you were either in the dark or you weren't in control of.
Well, I would refute that, Dominic, with respect, because I also looked at the evidence given by Mr Jim Shaw, Sir Nigel Hamilton, Patrick Nelson, and indeed others who were on the sponsor board programmes, who give evidence at this committee, who never once actually said that any safety concerns elevated to us, or even the accusation that was made in this committee on the 30th of April, were ever elevated to us. They believe that everything
what I'm talking about is the sort of general culture that pervaded all of this.
Well, and again, the general culture was that there was certainly structures in place to ensure that the redevelopment of the three stadia happened. It's only when it came to Castle Park that there were disputes and difficulties about how that redevelopment would happen. Now, we are where we are, but I was a minister who was at my desk. I was a minister who was accountable. I was a minister who was implementing not only the programme for government target, but I also went above and beyond that and will continue to do that.
Well, how specifically can you reassure us that you will be on top of it in the future?
Well, I have been on top of it, so even your inference would be in the future that it wasn't, and I refute that, Dominic, with respect. I will ensure that not only do we have a senior responsible officer working solely on the redevelopment of Castle Park and the redevelopment of the other two stadia, but also that we have the consultation into the sub-regional into soccer, and I will ensure that that's done and implement this report and any other challenges as best as I possibly can.
Have I got some time left?
No, that's
okay.
What's your oath?
Although I have to say, I don't think your questions were, or at least part of the question wasn't particularly answered. The next person, Basil McCrae.
Minister, would you agree that the more substantial issues that remain to be resolved for Casement Park involve the contingency planning scenarios that apply when one or more exits are unavailable?
And again, what I would say is that even from this morning, there's a variation of interpretations what happens. But and I said in my opening statement, the Power report recommended that all exits need to be considered. And I believe that this is something that we need to take forward as part of the implementation of this report.
Would you agree that it is the more substantial issues that remain to be resolved?
Well, I believe it's part of certainly into the consultation, the preparation for a new planning application. It is a substantial component. in terms of emergency evacuation, as was a robust traffic management strategy to be submitted as part of a new plan application or of a planning application for the redevelopment of Casement Park.
I'm just reading directly from the report, page 30, the second last paragraph. It says, the second last paragraph.
The more
It says,
substantial issues.
The more substantial issues that remain to be resolved for Casement Park involve the contingency planning scenarios that apply when one or more exits are unavailable. Would you agree with that statement?
I've already said that in my opening statement.
When did you first become aware that there was a problem with the emergency exiting schemes that this refers to?
Well, as I said before, from the 30th of April, there has been a fundamental disagreement with the allegations and the assertions that Paul Scott has made.
But in relation to this statement that it says the more substantial issues, when did you first become aware that they were substantial issues that need to be resolved?
Well, the substantial issue that needs to be resolved from this report has always been the need for a proper emergency evacuation strategy.
And I'm asking you, when did you first become aware of that as an issue?
Well, I first became aware that it was an issue for some after the 30th of April.
So, do you regret not being more fully informed about this issue beforehand?
I have no regrets about the information that I received. I have no regrets and certainly have no complaints about the way in which the structures that we're working with my department were adhered to. The only regret that I do have is that if anybody had concerns, that they decided to ignore or not elevate those to my attention.
But I'm just asking you, do you regret that you were not more fully informed? Because I think the report suggests that going forward, that the project sponsor board would be a good place for people to bring concerns that they should be elevated. So do you regret that you were not more informed?
Well, I regret that people who claim had substantial and serious concerns didn't elevate those to my level, or indeed even through their representatives who sit on the sponsor board, and that's what the report acknowledges.
So are you going to take a more hands-on approach as we go forward with this project?
No, I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to take the same approach as I've done.
So you don't think you need to get more involved in the process, given that there were deficiencies in risk escalations?
Well, no, just to be clear, Basil, the inference, if I'm right in saying that, and I think it was the inference that Dominic was trying to make, which I also disagree with, is that now that we have this report will be central, not only to any meetings that we do with officials, but also as a central component in terms of the sponsor board, and indeed the individual programme and project boards of the three stadia and the three governing bodies. So will there be more attention paid to some of the issues that have been raised in terms of how they're actioned? Or people understand them in terms of taking them forward? Absolutely.
So do you believe that a regional stadium will be built in Casement Park?
I do. I believe it can be achieved. The report says that, and I hope it will be achieved.
So given that you've read the report, because people have put some store by it, can you tell me what you understand by red amber?
Red amber means that it's the programme certainly is at a critical stage, that it is vulnerable, and that certain actions need to be taken for it to go from red amber to amber green and then to green.
Actually, just reading from the report, it says successful delivery of the programme is in doubt, with major risks or issues apparent in a number of key areas. But you've expressed to me just now some confidence that it will be built.
Well,
why are you so confident?
Well, let me finish off the part that you didn't read. It also says urgent action is needed to ensure that these are addressed and where resolution is feasible. I believe these issues can be addressed and resolution is feasible. And for me, that's quite important.
So, would you agree that one of the key issues to be addressed that we're doing at these key risks, that central to these discussions will be the need to agreement on what would be a reasonable management plan for scenarios where all exits to the Andersonstown Road are unavailable?
I believe that's essential, and that's part of any emergency evacuation plan.
And would you also agree that a report does not state anything about the contingency planning? It merely says, including what would be an acceptable time to evacuate the stadium.
I accept that.
So there's no confidence that can be drawn yet, because we haven't resolved this issue about whether 8 minutes is appropriate or a longer period is appropriate, that is something that has to be developed.
Yes, it actually says that this report will form part of the ongoing programme for the redevelopment of Casson Park. It also says that there are aspects of this report that need to be considered as part of the consultation for an application for planning. And it also says that these are vital things that not only for DCAL, STG and the sporting and governing bodies to bring forward.
So just will conclude, because I think it is quite clear, there is no agreement on the 8 minutes. There is no agreement yet. There's a discussion, and actually I think that the report is weak in this area, and I would personally take some convincing that anything other than 8 minutes is appropriate. But we'll have a discussion. How do you think relationships are going?
Well, I believe that from the 30th of April, particularly given some of the accusations that have been made, that relationships have been damaged. I believe that relationships, and the Power report was very clear in this, need to be reset. I believe they can be reset.
And would you like to be involved in that?
I will be involved in it.
How do you think relationships are with this committee?
I don't understand what you mean.
Well, the Chair mentioned it at the start, and I can just tell you that I was one of the members, but I was appalled and insulted that this report, which had come because of evidence to this committee, was issued at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and that the press were briefed on it, the GAA were briefed on it, all other stakeholders were briefed on it, and I get to read about it on the news. Do you not think that if we wanted to try and bring us involved, as we are key stakeholders, we have a statutory responsibility, that it might have been a better way, even in closed session, to have taken us through this report so that we would have understood your thinking before it was out in the press?
Well, first of all, I didn't deliberately set out to offend, insult anyone. The GAA and Paul Scott and Sport and I were specific stakeholders that were mentioned in the report. They seen it first. The media were briefed. The report in its entirety was given to all yourselves after 4 o'clock when it was published.
We'll call it. When did the GAA get a copy of it?
They got a copy of it earlier that day. I'm not too sure what time it
10
was.
a.m.
10 a.m.
Oh, right.
And Paul Scott, you were?
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Thank you. Finally, Gordon Dunn.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Minister, for coming in today. Do you accept that Paul Scott was a genuine employee who had genuine concerns about how his group, the STG, was treated within the project?
No, I don't accept it.
You don't?
I accept that Paul Scott has complaints and has made complaints, and they are subject of an investigation as we speak. I think it would be inappropriate for me to come down on one view or another while that process hasn't been completed, so I can't accept your assertion.
As Minister, can you give us assurance that Paul Scott will be treated properly? Having gone down the whistleblower process, can you give us an assurance that he will be treated as properly throughout the whole procedure, and that will continue?
I absolutely do give that assurance, as I would for any employee under the DCAL family.
Okay, is there not a real risk here that the public looking in will see that this report is in some ways cover for and a rebuff to what Paul Scott has genuinely put forward to us on at least 2 occasions and made it very public. And as a public servant, I think he's been very, very courageous and forthright in what he said. And to me, I never met the man until he came in here. I never spoke to him when he came into this room. To me, he was a straightforward Northern Ireland individual who had genuine concerns about what was proposed at the stadium and seemed to feel that no one was listening. Would you accept that?
No, I wouldn't accept that at all, and I think it's in keeping with the proposition that you put in your first question. I regret that someone feels that they had to come to committee in a very public way and make those concerns, and I think we all need to learn lessons like that. But because Mr Scott has initiated complaints and grievances which are currently in process, it is completely inappropriate for me to come down on one side or other than to confirm that Paul Scott or any other employee who has brought grievances forward, because that is one of the procedures that I initiated and instigated, will be treated in a confidential manner, which is completely appropriate.
Do you not feel now that there's a real risk that people generally will say the fact that there is a recommendation here that an independent person should be appointed to chair the STG, the skill set needed by this individual is mediation and facilitation rather than technical knowledge. That, to me, as an MLA sitting here, implies that Paul Scott does not meet those requirements, but that remains to be seen. But I believe people will come to the assumption that you didn't like Paul Scott's message, so you decided to shoot the messenger. And that's basically what has happened here with this report. And I find it unacceptable, to be honest.
Well, I actually find your remarks quite disgraceful, but to be honest...
Difference of opinion?
Well, if you prefer not to interrupt me, Chair, with respect, I didn't interrupt you.
Observation.
No, I know you're making an observation. It's not like, for example, Mr Scott made accusations in this committee, which he did, and that the department didn't come in to support him. I did. 2 processes initiated straight away on the 30th of April. One, first of all, was to look at the redevelopment of Casement Park, in particular around safety, and another, which I done, independent of the department and independent of myself, went to CPD and others, the auditors, about trying to get support for Mr Scott and anybody else who came forward. And I've done that, and I do that all day long because that's the right thing to do. What is not the right thing to do is to use this room to sit behind privilege and make accusations which have been unsubstantiated.
Well, you know, with all due respect, the evidence that we got, and we've had loads of evidence. We have loads of...
And you aren't finished yet.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
That's true. But it all went in support of what Mr Scott has said.
That's not the case.
The only contrary evidence is, and slight on evidence, is this report. Everyone else, and Belfast City Council, who I understand are the licensing authority, and the girl that came in was so clear on the criteria. And she, as I understand it, is an expert. And we all rely on the expertise of Belfast City Council to licence public places for sport, leisure and such like. We rely on that. And yet, the evidence, and she was adamant. Is she wrong too? Is she also misleading people? I don't think so. And I'm not. I honestly cannot see that this whitewashing report is, and that's what it is. It's just a whitewashing report to try and get over a problem that needs to be resolved.
Well, first of all, I think it's really down to power. I don't believe it's a whitewash of a report. I believe those remarks are inflammatory, frankly. I also believe that, and as Dennis has said it, not everybody's going to agree on the outcome of this. Not everybody's going to agree. But I have to be honest and say that I have used the British Cabinet Office and CPD through DFP to bring forward procedures, and I would do that because that is the most transparent way of doing it.
Okay.
I didn't, excuse me, Mr Dunn, I didn't sit in a room with potential developers or contractors scheming up a grubby scheme of millions of pounds. I done it in an open and transparent way. I haven't been obstructive or evasive ever.
Right. Why,
So
why,
you're not even completed in your inquiry and you're already come to conclusions and you're trying to tell me
you're
that
here
they're
to,
objective?
sorry, you're here to answer questions, not to attack members of the committee.
One other
Well, I didn't
question.
attack, I just responded to
No,
it.
that
Certainly
was-
wouldn't be guilty of
As
attacking
Minister,
anybody.
No, I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear that.
As Minister, were you concerned that the plans went to the DOE Planning Service? Was it May, June 2014? They seem to be rushed. That those plans went to the Planning Service without sign-off by the STG. How does that sit with you?
Well, again, these are all things that actually wasn't even stated, but we need to work through. I think the relationships around the STG and their relationship to plans, planning and future processes will be worked through. And to be frank, again, even in terms of the assertion that you made as part of the role of Belfast City Council, that conclusion was silent in this report. Do we need to make sure that we do everything we can to ensure that there's a robust, open and transparent process around planning of a new application to DOE? Absolutely, and that's why the power recommendation is to go beyond the statutory timescale and go to 20 weeks.
Okay. Can I just make one final point? Could you just give us an assurance, Minister, and the residents are here, a number of them, that the residents of that area, who your party represents quite a number of, will be involved in an open, transparent process? And to me, as someone from an outside constituency, and I'll be honest and frank about it, I find it totally alarming that a proposal for a 38,000 building is going to be built there within a residential area with all the issues of traffic management and the impact of possible lockdown on the local residents, all of those issues. How those issues can be addressed. And I want an assurance from you and your party that you're going to be open and transparent in relation to this. And I think this is a major key issue. And I've studied it. I understand that the Lake of the Odyssey has about 10,000 people. It goes to that. And living on the far side of Belfast, we all live with the implications of traffic from that. The other two stadiums that have been built and are doing well have a capacity, I understand, about 18,000. Now, to move it from 18 up into 38 in a residential area has major implications for traffic management, for local residents, for the local community and for the environment. And I plead as an MLA from a totally outside of the constituency to give genuine recognition and concern to these people, because these are real issues. They're real issues to real people. And I have no electoral gain to gain from it. And I do it because I believe in doing what is right and saying what is right. And I don't believe it is right to cram a building in there with 38,000 capacity into what I understand in recent times was being used for the Michaela Hart, that sort of event. The Michaela Hart event was about 18,000 when I believe there was traffic chaos in the West Belfast area. So, can you give me an assurance briefly, Minister, with all due respect, a brief assurance that those issues will be looked at closely and sincerely?
Well, first of all, I was at the Michaela event and there wasn't traffic chaos. Secondly, and more importantly, I will ensure that everybody is involved in the consultation process around a planning application, and that the consultation process isn't just about planning, it's during and post-construction. The GAA, Ulster Council GAA, need to be good neighbours, not just the people who live surrounding that stadia development, but also within the West Belfast community, and I believe there will be. I find it remarkable that, not that you have those opinions, because I believe you're genuine in trying to ensure that residents, all residents, aren't disrupted unnecessarily, but I believe it is remarkable that your party would have a view given you give the clearance for 42,000 and then went down to 38,000. The business case and the political direction was stacked up and was passed on, and you know, it's not like we decided from May 2011 to go for 38,000. I'm implementing a programme for government commitment and the executive decision that was made in March 2011 to the full.
Yeah, it was
If that's okay.
executive
Thanks.
decision, yeah.
Executive
Yeah,
decision.
absolutely.
Absolutely. All parties signed up to that.
Yes,
Can I just
that's
finish with 2 points that members have raised, and I don't think they were fully covered. Just quickly, you told us there that on the 30th of April this year you became aware of these big issues around, emergency exiting. On the 14th of June last year, 2014, the Chief Executive of Sport NI said, in regard to Casement Park, I think the current design has run into a problem in relation to emergency exiting. This was a high-level summary in regard to the 3 stadiums, very clear about Kingspan, Windsor Park. When it came to Casement, all that she would say was, we're continuing to give advice to work on it. There is a problem in relation to emergency exiting. On the 14th of June 2014, were you aware of that?
Well, I'm aware that there's issues been raised subsequent to the...
No, but I'm asking you, were you aware at that time?
No.
So you don't read the papers?
No, I read with the papers, and I read some of the commentary in the papers. It doesn't mean to say what people comment in the papers is factually correct.
Well, if the Chief Executive of Sport NI says something in a paper, I think if you're the Minister, you would pay some attention to it, at least ask a question. That actually suggests you were asleep at the wheel.
No, far from it.
Well, you didn't know about this at all.
Well, it's like a lot of issues.
Fast asleep at the wheel.
It's like a lot of issues. People can make political statements, which have done. It cannot be backed up.
This was Sport NI. No, she wasn't making a political statement.
That's their opinion. That is their opinion.
Sorry, she is the head of Sport NI.
That is not the case, and I believe you're being deliberately mischievous.
No, I'm quoting from the Belfast Telegraph.
Misleading. Oh, right, okay. Well,
I'm quoting words. Secondly, could I ask Dennis a question? The Minister said that the people who produced this review have made a clear judgment. That was with regard to those technical issues, about 8 minutes, the pitch and phased evacuation. Said they've made a clear judgment. You, on the contrary, said there are various opinions that come through.
Yes,
and now, could I just ask, who will be the final arbiter of what's right and what's wrong?
There is not going to be a single final arbiter because...
But there will have to be, because somebody will have to give us a certificate.
Because the process, as you know, the process involves a number of different stages. So, for example, when it comes to the approval of business cases, DFP is often the final arbiter in those cases. When it comes to the need to move to the next stage in the programme, that will be the SRO's role. When it comes to then the need to get the actual safety certificate,
that's the point.
That's Belfast City Council.
So it's Belfast City Council. It's not a commercial concern. No. We're absolutely clear then that it's not some commercial company that has a multi-million-pound connection with the builders. It's actually somebody that's independent. The official that we had here from Belfast City Council, who was very clear about the 8 minutes. Thank you very much. We've really appreciated it.
And again, Chair, thank you very much for allowing us to come to this committee. Again, I would say that what you need to do, certainly from here on in, is read the factual positions, not quote some papers or someone's opinion who didn't elevate things to the places where they needed to be.
Well,
and we're happy to come back again in the future to answer questions around factual accuracy, not someone's political perception.
Minister, that's an issue between you and the chair, or whatever her role is, or current status, who was the person who was then the chair, Chief Executive of Sport NI. But that's up to you and her to sort that out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
William.
Yes, Chairman. I have to say, having listened to the evidence given by the Minister and the Senior Civil Servant in the Department, I am rather concerned that the letter which the Minister sent out on the 12th of May, where she states in the opening paragraph, totally committed to delivering a first-class modern stadium for Gaelic games at Casement Park, which meets the highest standards, and I'm determined that there will be no compromise on safety. Having listened to the evidence in the last hour and a half, I am genuinely concerned, because I've written down, the Minister talks about accuracy, I've written down quotes of what people said here. And the Minister talked about Sport NI's view on emergency exiting. Sport NI's view on emergency exiting is absolutely the view of Belfast City Council. It is the view of the Sports Ground Safety Authority. It is a view that is uniform across this kingdom. So the truth of the matter is, Sport NI's view, and the man who chairs it, who the Minister clearly indicated she was going to remove during her evidence, is independent. And he is used by Belfast City Council, has been used across Northern Ireland, used in the Republic and on the mainland. So Valerie Brown has backed up what Mr Scott has said to this committee. We await to see whether the Sports Ground Safety Authority will do the same on the 3rd of September. But it's very clear the Minister wants all removed, and I think that's unfair. Because the Safety Technical Group isn't Paul Scott's view. The Safety Technical Group is the Police Service of Northern Ireland's view, the Fire Authority for Northern Ireland's view, although they weren't able to be here, but they did sign up to what was being said, the Ambulance Service's view, Sport NI's view, and Belfast City Council's view. Now, you know, I am concerned whenever Mr McRae and others raised the 8 minutes, now Mr Dunn. There was a bomb scare last week on the Andersonstown Road. And exactly the scenario that Mr Scott painted to this committee happened. And yet that's ignored. And, you know, Dennis McMahon talked, as the Permanent Secretary of the Department, talked about differences of interpretation when he was talking about the red and green guides. There is no difference of interpretation. The red and green guide is the stipulation and the regulation for safety at sports grounds here. So they're not open to interpret it, and it's very dangerous for the Permanent Secretary of that department to use that language. And I have to say that causes me
Well, it's
real
undermining
concern.
a document that's a departmental document to ensure the safety of spectators.
Yeah.
It's actually undermining that.
It's undermining the guides, suggesting that they are open to interpretation, when both Valerie Brown, in evidence to this committee, and Paul Scott made reference to the fact that they are guidelines and regulations. In relation to the pitch being used, I am fairly confident that I have heard people, not with commercial interests giving evidence to this committee, but people whose job, responsibility and role is safety in sports grounds, giving evidence suggesting that all new constructed stadia, the pitch should not be taken into play. For existing stadia, that's how it works, but not for new stadia. So this is completely, this whole thing is being muddied on the area grade, and that's dangerous. And the Minister talks about improving relationships, yet the Minister said very clearly here she was going to remove the man whose job it is to chair the Safety Technical, appointed by her department, appointed, I understand, by Mr Malloy when he was in that role. Now, you can't reset relationships and do that, attack Sport NI the way Sport NI were attacked here in this hour and a half. And I have to say, you know, I do despair that things that are clearly sacrosanct in terms of law and recognised in terms of the building of new stadia are being in some way muddied, left to interpretation, and potentially could lead to people being exposed to health and safety issues. And it flies in the face of the evidence. I just sound this warning. It flies in the face of the evidence we've got Valerie Brown, as I've said on 2 occasions, and Paul Scott, and this simply cannot be allowed to happen. We have a duty and responsibility as a scrutiny committee to ensure, and I'm glad you drew attention to what Mr McMahon said, but I am genuinely concerned, and I will be putting, and I'm sure other members will do the same, putting those questions to the Sports Ground Authority when they come here, and asking further, and the point that Mr Cree raised, exactly what role, was it an in-depth role that they had in this report? This report should have been produced by that organisation. I think this actually is a report that is not something that should be gone to the procurement directorate. But this should have been done by experts who are nationally and internationally recognised in this field. It's because to do otherwise is dangerous and it's poor government.
It devalues the report, yeah. Mr. Mullen?
Yes, I think when Mr Humphreys talks about cloud in the water and whatnot, he's doing a very good job himself. And having selective amnesia is no way of dealing with a report. Indeed, if you look at page 27 of the report and talking about using the pitch as a point of evacuation, it does say in the red guide it can be used on a forward motion. Now that is the word, that is in the red guide, and that's in your report. So let's not try to muddy the waters you talk about and have your own interpretation on it. Let's look at the red guide itself. Top of page 27.
Well, you can come in again, Davy, after this next bit.
No, we did hear Mr. Humphreys out here. I think what we're doing here in the space of 10 minutes is start and just take the whole thing apart. We have to make up our minds here what we're doing. Are we accepting the report, or are we just taking it apart now? Because what has after been said there about the pitch is totally wrong.
Yes.
I think you know, read that out then. Read it out. Read it out. What
Sorry,
it says there.
if you speak through the chair, please.
Well, I'm speaking through you, Chair.
No, you asked him to read out. Speak through the chair, please.
All right, would ask him to read out what's in
Well, it's
the
not, you can read as well as I can read.
Right, okay, I'll read it out. The red guide states that the pitch may be considered a place of comparative safety which spectators can be evacuated before using other emergency exits. This does not mean, however, that pitch can be considered in calculating the emergency exiting time. While in practice, spectators may evacuate onto the pitch or an area of activity in an emergency, this should not form part of the calculation of the emergency evacuation time for grounds. The pitch should be available for forward evacuation as a place of comparative safety in an emergency. So therefore, it can be used. So please, if you're going to be concerned about something, be concerned about the facts. Be concerned about the facts.
Chairman.
Sorry,
And
just let me, right, Mr. Raymond, let me just speak one more, because I can read, so I'll read this sentence. This does not, N-O-T,
Yes.
not
Yes.
mean.
Yes, I've said that.
Yep, so I'm saying it again. This does not mean that the pitch can be considered in calculating the emergency exiting time. End of the matter. That's what it says. Plain English, black and white, cannot be used in the
Can be
calculation.
used.
No, it says it can't. It's got the wee word not. There's only 3
What
letters
does that
in
wee
it.
word say below it? What does the wee word say below
Thank you
it?
very much. Over to David Hilditch, please.
Sorry, it was just the point. Yes, it forward and all that sort of thing, but the appropriate accident mechanism have to be in place to allow that to happen, and that's not current at Casement Park.
Thank you.
We've been at this since day one, and
Right.
people still don't understand it.
Right. Thank you very much. That's and the point about the report
In
is,
charge of some game then, boys, is that?
yes, I dread to think about the safety of people who feel
Chairman,
so
can I just make the point
It's so tough.
that the contribution that we've just heard actually highlights that when experts are not used in a scenario, that we have interpretation which is highly dangerous. And that's why experts should always be used in matters of
Absolutely.
public safety, in this case, around emergency exiting in stadia. We have seen disasters, we've also had disasters averted narrowly, and that's why experts should always be used. So we don't have the sort of interpretation we just heard.
It is alarming to say that they were not aware, neither the Minister nor the Permanent Secretary, it's truly alarming, that they weren't aware that the company, the commercial company, providing the advice was currently involved in a multi-million-pound contract with the people who are building Casement Park. The fact that they didn't know, because I have to say, I never heard of KSS. I simply Googled the name, and when the site came up, that was the first thing came up. It's the most obvious thing in the world. That would automatically. Now, that's not it. The concern for me is that the Minister didn't know, Mr. McMahon didn't know. There's also a concern about CPD, and I think we need to get to the bottom of that as well. Can I say also, I listened carefully. The Minister said she was not aware of a statement made in the public realm by the then Chief Executive of Sport NI in the middle of last year. Every minister receives every morning a set of newspaper cuttings from the previous day, and if there's anything particularly significant, the Permanent Secretary or someone in the private office would bring it to the attention of the Minister. That is simply something that lacks credibility when she said she didn't know. Yeah.
Chairman, what that does alarm, and I would ask then that we ask as a committee for a full set of the sponsor board minutes, right?
We have those apparently.
Right up to date.
Have we got them up to the current?
I think it's April 2015.
Up to April
I
2015?
would need to check, but it's on the share drive.
Anything after that?
Okay.
And if we could establish if there have been others since that,
Yes,
because
very much.
that is a very, very serious situation.
Okay, members content that we've done as much as we can today on this, or sorry?
Another issue I wanted to raise,
Yes.
Chairman, with your indulgence. Chairman, committee will be aware of remarks were made last week and by way of an apology by EasyJet in relation to the 12th of July. I declare an interest as an Orangeman. I have to say, I have been heavily involved in the Orange Institution in terms of the development of the 12th of July as a tourist attraction. And somewhere in the region of 750,000 people go out and watch the 12th of July, and about 250,000 in this city alone. And I managed to secure money from the then Director Minister David Hanson under the Labour administration for Belfast Orange Fest. That was then continued by Margaret Ritchie when we met her, and then yourself when you were Minister. The Stripe project has done an enormous amount of work in terms of reaching out to community across the city and across Northern Ireland. And of course, it was funded by Europe and DSD. Decal as well, in terms of the money that Decal gave the Orange Order and the GA in terms of reaching out, and sadly that money has been ended in terms of the project of Orange, people from the Orange going and speaking to schools across the school estate, and the GA doing the same. Of course, now we've more recently had Schomburg House and Sloane's House being opened in Loughgall. All of that about dealing with the issue of perception, misconception, and genuine concerns that people have. Now, I think the comments and in terms of response to the blogger that EasyJet made have caused great annoyance and offence. And I would like to propose that a letter is sent by you as chair of this committee asking EasyJet to reconsider that apology, because it has caused genuine offence to the Orange family and the wider community. I propose that.
Okay, someone second that?
I would second that, Chair. I thought it was uncalled for, and again, I'm a member of the institution, but to respond on one person and simply black the whole thing out, I thought was very cavalier, to say the least, but also very unfair.
Okay.
The other point is
sorry.
that, you know, we all are told we have to be tolerant and we have to celebrate diversity, and we have to recognise that, and we have to show respect. I think those issues are most important. And I think, you know, for an airline that boasts to be Northern Ireland's favoured airline, and it probably is, it's extensively used by the people of Northern Ireland, and as comes across as a budget airline. I find it very disappointing as a regular user of it to see a decision made on a whim. I think it's very, very disappointing indeed, and I would support the proposal that we write and lodge your objections.
Other to ask.
It is.
Is it possible to get, before we take a decision on it, to get some the press coverage around it and take the decision at the next meeting?
Well, I'm happy to get, but I would like to see all the press coverage around it as well, but I would still like to propose it because we don't meet again until September. So. It's germane now.
I think it would be helpful, yes. We should actually we can take both of those proposals, because we can actually, I haven't seen the actual EasyJet article that was originally in their magazine, or what other events they advertised. I don't know whether, for example, I don't know whether they advertised or mentioned any time the West Belfast Festival. Does it get mentioned? I don't know. So we need to ask about all those things. But in the meantime, in the interests of inclusivity and cultural diversity, that we would send a letter to EasyJet expressing concern, disappointment at the way that the whole thing was done.
It's very difficult to vote on something when you're not fully informed about the full background to it.
I think probably as regards the article in the magazine about Orange Fest, I think that's been fairly well covered in the media. What I think is probably more significant would be what other events, so you can draw a comparison, and we can certainly get that. But it has been proposed that we send a letter expressing concern in those sort of terms.
In the interests of getting a letter that we can agree with, perhaps Mr Humphreys would consider just writing to EasyJet, inviting them to explain the situation.
Well,
that way we would just get information about what's going on, and then we can deal with it at that stage.
Well, as I say, Chair, I mean, I've no difficulty with information being gathered, press cuttings being looked at as well. I have had, the other day, a conference call with them along with the Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of Ireland, and it is a matter for them what their position is, and we have asked them to state that publicly, Basil, with respect, but they're a commercial organisation.
And have they?
Not yet.
That's why I just think...
Yeah, but they're a commercial organisation. I think as a committee that is charged with promoting culture, arts and leisure, and scrutiny of those facets of our community, I respect everybody else's culture and tradition and don't object. And there's many things I've read in the magazines and aircraft and whatever coming into Northern Ireland that I haven't agreed with. Never once complained, because you know what? I actually see diversity as being a strength, not a weakness, and I think others should do the same.
Well, it has been proposed that a letter in the sort of terms that were raised there be sent to EasyJet. Sorry, somebody second that? Oh, yes, sorry, Leslie, sorry, I apologise. Leslie Creed seconded that. All I can do is put that to the meeting. All those in favour of that? Sorry, I should have said, actually, just to keep ourselves right, those members who are members of the organisation which refers, you should state accordingly, and I think members around the table would all be members.
Yeah, declaring interest.
Yeah, declaring interest.
What organisation are you talking about, Chair?
It's about Orange Fest and the
Grand Orange Lodge of Ireland.
Yeah.
You're talking about Orange Order?
Yeah, probably not the Grand Orange Lodge.
Are you going to declare something?
Okay, all those against?
Why don't you just say it?
Okay.
If they're not members, no.
Sorry, yes, abstentions.
Not sectarian.
Oh, sorry, I was involved in discussion there. I'm happy to support the sending of the letter. I'd like to. The declaration of interest is that I am not a member of the Orange Order, so.
I don't think
Oh yes, he got that.
Yes, I went for yes, but
Right,
I mean,
okay. Thank you.
whatever.
Okay, we'll send a letter in that regard. Next meeting, just for information purposes, is strategic planning session on Thursday the 10th of September in the Kingspan Stadium. Its home members will be able to visit Windsor and Casement Park. We're not sure about the second one on this day also. However, this has not been confirmed. This meeting will be held in closed session. And could I seek members' agreement to adjourn the meeting?
Great.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly.